Hey everybody, Tim Kawakami here, 4 Nerds Plus Minus with my co-host. It's Matt Barrows of The Athletic. We are recording this on Wednesday, a few hours after the season-ending press conference by Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch. Standard fare. This is what they do. They're a little bit delayed. I think they had some things to sort out. But pretty interesting with 41 minutes. As I always do to lead off these episodes when something's happened. Matt Barrows, what are your highlights from what Shanahan and Lynch said?
There were several. I don't know if there was anything earth-shattering said today. I mean, they covered a lot of ground. I mean, from electrical substation to Mac Jones, lots of talk about wide receivers. And I think that's going to be a big theme this year. No surprise. I mean, I guess it was a surprise just how bluntly they put it, but they're about to sever once and for all their ties to Brandon Aiyuk. No surprise that Kyle Shanahan really talked up Ricky Pearsall and said, before this guy got injured in week 4, he was, he had records among the receivers. He was doing a great job, and he came in really prepared for the season, which sort of bolsters what we were talking about the last time we spoke, which was they love Ricky Pearsall. And they believe in Ricky Pearsall, and they believe that he can be the guy in the offense. So I think that corroborates that thought that we had. And then Juwan Jennings, I mean, they didn't come out and say this specifically, but it sounded as if they're going to attempt to do what they couldn't do back in August, which is come to some sort of contract extension with him, which would bolster that position. And what I wrote about was that, that would really help kind of solidify that position, but it's not going to cure their speed issue. The lack of speed at that position, the lack of speed on offense in general. And that was discussed as well. And then there's Mac Jones. And, the quote from Shanahan was that, I don't see him not being a part of this team next year. You and I can debate whether we believe him or not. It sounded a lot to me like, they sort of have a pat answer when it comes to that, which is we're not in the business of trading away good players. They say that a lot.
Which they've said before for players that they pretty soon after that.
Well, Samuel, 1 year ago, that
exactly.
was a quote coming out of the Lynch Shanahan press conference. And you know what, Tim? They ended up trading Deebo Samuel.
Oh, my goodness.
That's spoiler. And so, I mean, let's just get into it now. I mean, I think that if they are offered something substantial for Mac Jones, you're still in this kind of mode where you want to get younger. You still want to save money. You do that through your draft picks. So I think that if they got a decent offer for Mac Jones, they take it. I mean, I stand by that despite what Shanahan said today.
I agree. It's what they always say. It's what Kyle almost always says. He said that about
games.
He said that about Jimmy Garoppolo. Now they didn't end up trading him, but they sure wanted to, and they just couldn't do it. He got the surgery, and they got all mumbo jumbo, and then he had to bring him to camp. All those things, but I just think it's Shanahan's normal thing is not to give anybody extra bidding, leverage on you. Like if you say, "Oh yeah, we'll look to trade him," then they could say, "Hey, you're going to trade him anyway. We'll offer you a 5," and what they really want is a 2. I think 3rd round pick seems to be the sweet spot. And it's almost, I mean, I don't want to say, it's bad business to keep 2 quarterbacks because we just saw it helps to have 2 quarterbacks. But you could try to maybe count on yourself to be able to, resuscitate somebody else or get Curtis Rourke up to that spot. And hopefully, Purdy doesn't get hurt. Or if he does, the guy you can win a few games and not necessarily 5 like Mac Jones did. You need the picks. You need to load up for this upcoming season. I think that's going to be a theme, at least of what fans are thinking. And it was a little bit about what Shanahan and Lynch said. I asked them, as Shanahan said, a very long question about that. But this locker room has earned the right to let's go boost it and go get it. Let's go get a Super Bowl. I think that was kind of the plan anyway. How long have we been talking about? The 2026 was the goal. That was it. They're setting up. They cleaned out the salary cap last offseason to try to get space for this offseason. That doesn't mean they have to spend it. That doesn't mean they really want to spend a ton, but they can. They've earned the right to go get 2 good players to be able to beat the Seahawks. They were at least 2 players short. Now, injuries and all those things, but you're going to have injuries every year. And part of that to me is if Mac Jones is worth 3rd round pick, you don't keep a second quarterback who's worth a 3rd round pick. It just is too much. And you cross your fingers. He was great to have this season, but Purdy might not be hurt for 8 games next season. Probably, that wouldn't be, you wouldn't want that to happen, and it probably won't happen. Why keep a quarterback who could be a starter somewhere else? Now, that goes, Mac Jones is probably going to want to be traded, I would think. Do you want to keep him when you want, all these things? They don't have to tip their hands, but I think that's typical Shanahan not tipping his hand. I was going to ask him again about Clay Kubiak, but I thought, you know what, this is going to be the same answer. But I think that's another one. When he was asked about Saleh, is Saleh going to take some assistance? He goes, Saleh is going to maybe, we'll see. Like, I just think this is all negotiation. I don't necessarily think they're going to get a pick for Clay Kubiak, but it's all like conversation. And he doesn't want to ever start by saying, yes, I'll give up. And then now he's, you want to say no, and then let's negotiate to get to yes. Now, pretty direct answer about the defensive coordinator, though, Barrows. I think that was relatively newsy.
Yeah, that was newsy, and probably, not what the NFL wants to hear.
Yeah,
which is that, we've already decided that Gus Bradley is getting the job. We just have to jump through the hoops of the Rooney Rule. They're trying to combat the notion that teams are not taking those interviews seriously. Now, the 49ers are saying goodbye to a minority coach at that position in Robert Saleh, and they had Steve Wilkes, and they've had D'Amico Ryan. So it's not like their track record is bad in that regard, but that's probably not what the league wants.
But didn't Shanahan do that before with an OC candidate? Right? I think he announced that Clay Kubiak was going to be the offensive.
Oh, right, yeah.
In February, and then he had to go back. Well, wait a minute, we're going to have to go back and actually have a process of this. You can't just name a guy offensive coordinator on staff. But Kyle, he makes these decisions, and then they have to go through the process. But he made it pretty clear. I've heard this again. This is not what the NFL wants to hear. I don't care if they hear it from me. I heard this in August. It was like, if Saleh that Saleh wanted a head coaching job, and he might just take anyone, and we'll see how good this Tennessee job. It isn't. 49er fans are mad that it's not a good enough job. You should have been picky. He wants to be a head coach. Like, he just wants to be. He just didn't think he got a fair shot in New York. And these guys always have the ego that if it's me, a bad situation is a good situation because it's me. We'll see. And then secondly, I heard Gus Bradley was hired as a special assistant to be the next defensive coordinator when Saleh left. Again, that's not that way you're officially supposed to do it, but that's the way it was. Gus Bradley. I don't think anything that happened this year would have changed that. They'll go through the process. They'll have to interview 2 minority candidates. They should take it seriously, and if they get wowed, then you go that way. But their Seattle system, that's what Fred Warner and Nick Bosa and all those guys know and want. You kind of went away from it with Steve Wilkes, or to a guy who was trying to, coach it, who didn't know it. Didn't work. Go with a guy who helped originate, right? Gus Bradley was one of the main originators of this thing, or at least was on staff when it was happening with Dan Quinn and Pete Carroll. That's who that's who's going to be. And Shanahan sometimes does shoot very straight. It's very likely because
he was being honest, and
we're
knocking him for being honest, but I agree with you. Bradley is Saleh's mentor. I remember doing, sort of an introductory piece, a profile on Saleh back in 2017. Who is Robert Saleh? And he talked a lot about Pete Carroll, and he talked a lot about Gus Bradley. And those were the 2 kind of inspirations for him. It was Bradley that brought Saleh to Jacksonville and gave him that linebackers coach job there. So, it makes total sense. There's continuity. We've noticed Bradley, in the locker room, talking up Diamador Lenore, talking up Cleveland Farrell, talking up a lot of the defensive players after games and whatnot. So he's familiar. He's building relationships with them. As far as who Saleh could take with him to Tennessee, I mean, the guy that jumps out to me, whose name has been on everyone's lips just in the last, I don't know, 3 weeks or so, is KJ Wright, the assistant. I forget what his title is, but his de facto job with the 49ers is working with the linebackers, working with Johnny Holland there. And he's been the guy, his assignment in recent weeks was to, work with the new guy linebackers, which was every linebacker on the team practically. So he's had a big hand in Eric Kendricks, in Garrett Wallow, in Kaiser White. He's worked with those guys, and the fact that they played so well, especially in that Philadelphia game, is a credit to KJ Wright. So I wonder whether, last year, Darryl Tapp, who was Chris Kasurik's assistant coach on the defensive line, became the defensive line coach of the Commanders. I wonder whether KJ Wright would get that job, the linebackers coach job in Tennessee.
I wonder if Saleh is going to try to take. Sorry about that. I don't know how that happened. Going to try to take an offensive staffer to be his OC. I mean, there are other Shanahan system guys out there that he doesn't necessarily have to pluck them straight up for an staff. And if indeed he would want to take Clay Kubiak, I would imagine that's been blocked already by Shanahan, or is about to be. We'll see. Or it could be a negotiation, or it could be someone else. Very interesting. These staffs, the Shanahan system is very popular. The guys get hired off that staff. Guys move around, and maybe you can come back. And Kyle is grumbling that it's keeping him from his vacation, which is, we know Kyle enjoys. He likes his vacation in Cabo. He likes his vacation in San Diego. But we saw a tired Kyle. Well, as always at the end of the season, he's worn down. These guys always are. It takes a lot out of them. Lynch seemed fine, but I'm sure he's been through the ringer too. Do you think Matt Barrows, just from the way they answered these questions, the way they feel about the team, are they ready? Are they poised to make a big move?
I mean, we talked about defensive end and wide receiver the last time. I mean, I think that a big move has to be made at both of those positions, or the D line more in general. I thought, one more item from the press conference is that they didn't want to put any specific dates on it, but they suggested that Mykel Williams and Nick Bosa would be back at some point in training camp, which would mean week 1 seems very much in play for them to be back in the lineup. So, that's a big deal. That's good news. Are they going to be, at the top of their game at that point? I don't know. I mean, Mykel Williams was a rookie. He's still got, growth to make, et cetera, et cetera. He's going to miss the whole off season. That's a big deal. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think you go into 2026 thinking, okay, we've got Nick Bosa. He, both of those guys said that he's tracking well. That was the verbiage that they used, which means that, they go in for checkups and updates with Elatrosh and his crew down in LA, and those have been going very well. But I don't think you can count on Mykel Williams. I think that Bryce Huff kind of showed you what he is, which is, when he's paired with a really elite pass rusher on the other side, he can be effective, but he's not an every down guy, and he needs the other player there. Mm-hmm. He can't handle double teams and chips and things like that. So I would think that a defensive lineman comes in at some point. I got to think that free agency and the draft are in order for both of those spots. So I think that they'll sign a prominent receiver and a prominent defensive lineman in free agency, and maybe the prominent receiver is Juwan Jennings. That's absolutely possible. And then I think that they're going to use their first and second round picks on a defensive end or wide receiver, or one or the other. But that seems to be kind of clearly where the issues are right now. You can make a good argument for tight end. George Kittle Achilles going to be 33, I think 33 next season. I don't think that he's slowing down or showed signs of slowing down by any stretch. He's, at one point he was making a push for a 1,000-yard season after missing 5 games at the beginning. So he's still extremely productive and sort of exactly what this offense needs or calls for. But I mean, they're also picking at pick number 27. That's often the spot where the first tight end in the draft is taken. So maybe this is the year that they do that. But I forget what your question was. I went off.
Big move, and you talk all
I think there will be 2 that kind of qualify. It's not going to be Javon Hargrave big, but I think we're talking about starter capability on defense and part of the rotation at least on offense.
Well, I think their biggest move. I mean, I think they could do. They've got the money to do that and trade for somebody. And I think Max Crosby's got to be right in their sights. I think he's gettable. I mean, I think they could get him. He's really good. They've thought about him for a long time. They've admired him for a long time. Just perfect bookend with Nick Bosa. I think the Raiders are going to trade him based on everything that happened at the end of the year. See, 49ers can get him. But I also think receiver is a higher priority in that market. And I know Justin Jefferson, if he's gettable, and there are rumblings that he might be, that whole J.J. McCarthy thing, and how many years are you going to pay, Justin Jefferson top money, or how many years is he going to want to sit there and wait for J.J. McCarthy to get to be even decent as a quarterback, or is they're going to have to go cycle back and go get another quarterback? I think Justin Jefferson would be the perfect Shanahan receiver. They did try to trade for him early in the Aiyuk saga. It seems like years ago when that negotiation started and the 49ers called up the Vikings in 2020, like April 2024, when it was first getting a little musty. There's a Schefter report about it. I'd forgotten about that. Doesn't surprise me. And then they did look at drafting him, and he went 22 and they got Aiyuk at 25. I can't think of a more perfect Shanahan receiver, right? That's just long burst, can get open deep, can get, run all the routes. That's what Shanahan needs. And what can you do to get him? Can you give up 2 1s and Ricky Pearsall? Can you, whatever, Mac Jones, whatever. Although if you are acquiring Mac Jones, you probably want to keep Justin Jefferson. So I'm not sure that would help that trade offer, but I don't know that they can get him. I think they can get one of the 2. I think they can get Crosby, but can you get Justin Jefferson? I think they're set up for it. They could give him an extension. I mean, I think it's going to take an extension when you get a player like that. They got the money for it. They have $27 million off of next year's cap that's gone when Brandon Aiyuk forfeited. That doesn't mean they have exactly $27 million in cap space, but they've got cap space. They have a lot of it. They're rolling over like $19 million. They can redo and knock down Bosa from 43 to, they can knock that down to 20 if they want to. Takes guaranteed money, push in the future. Trenton Williams, I think that absolutely is looking for an extension knockdown. I think he's like 34 million. You knock that down, you have more and more cap space. This is doable. And there are that one player away. They were with Emmanuel Sanders. And guess who Shanahan compared a young Justin Jefferson to? Matt Barrows.
Emmanuel Sanders?
Emmanuel Sanders. And he's way better, at this point, he's obviously way better than Emmanuel Sanders. Emmanuel Sanders was never an NFL Offensive Player of the Year quality, but this is a kind of receiver that he likes. And if you got the chance for it, and also they do need players who are going to carry on past Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle. And obviously Justin Jefferson is 26. I don't want to go on. That's my column, but that's I don't know if that's possible. But, man, if I'm the 49ers, I get first in line and say, what will it take? Minnesota, what will it take? Try to make the Vikings say no because you're throwing everything you got at it. And I think this is the year to do it. I think there are 2 players worse than the Seahawks. And maybe when everybody's healthy, just 1 player worse than the Seahawks. But when you go into a playoff game, you get 1 catch for 1 yard out of your receivers. It's kind of loud. It's kind of hard to miss. And it does make sense when you've traded Deebo Samuel and had Brandon Aiyuk go AWOL in you in 1 calendar year. They need to replace some of that. So there you go. You can react however you want to, or you got other suggestions, other names for out there that they could acquire?
So you're saying that after a year after going all in 24 and having that pile of chips just topple over on you, and then tightening your belt going into 25, they're going to go right back to crazy Super Bowl or bust mode.
I mean, how many years can you wait for Christian McCaffrey? How many years of Christian McCaffrey do you have left, by the way? How many years of Trent Williams do you have back? This will be the 10th year of Shanahan Lynch. I'm not saying that there's any excess pressure on them, but it does build up. And sometimes it happens all at once. Sean McDermott, I don't think, was expecting to be fired. Sean McDermott got fired because it had been too long. They literally said it. It's been we hit a playoff wall. I don't think that's the mentality with the 49ers. I think Jed York kind of got that way with Harbaugh obviously way too soon and understands that was a silly move. But it can happen. And it's not up to us to say, you think Shanahan and Lynch aren't hungry? I mean, they're dying for a Super Bowl. So I'm not saying be reckless. I'm not saying, again, Javon Hargrave is the contract that's mentioned to me that they really regretted, at least, upper management did. Justin Jefferson would not be Javon Hargrave. Now, trading picks is not great, but, if you think you're going to be good, how many times? So you're trading Ricky Pearsall and with some other late first-round pick, is that going to be?
Oh, they're not trading Ricky. Ricky
might,
is like Kyle Shanahan's son.
Yeah,
that's not happening.
They could. For Justin Jefferson, they could. He might trade his son too for Justin Jefferson.
Poor Carter. Poor Carter.
Carter.
Carter's like most improved. Carter's a up and comer. He's a riser.
Did you see who was running routes for Tom Brady pregame though in Seattle?
Oh, I didn't see that. No, yeah.
Jackson York running routes. That's what
Jackson York. Yeah, he's
sprouted up. He's sprouted up.
Rambunctious kid. He broke both of his wrists at some point in the spring, and I saw him before he was supposed to be catching footballs, doing that on the sideline. I wrote Jed, and he's like, "Just don't tell Danielle." That was that.
Oh, you just did. I know she's a loyal
Danielle's a big watcher of this. I think she probably found out since then. But okay, let's go back. I love your Max Crosby trade scenario because that would take away one big chunk of what they have to do this offseason and would allow you to use that 27th pick on a receiver. Maybe the receiver we were watching the other night on Miami, who looked a lot like Deebo Samuel, Omar something. I can't remember his name. But I think that the Justin Jefferson part of it is the mechanism by which you get something from Mac Jones. I think that the Vikings are going to think, okay, we've got this 26-year-old wonderkind receiver. We need somebody to throw him the ball while he's still in the kind of meaty part of his career. And they had great success with a 49ers, resurrection project and Sam Darnold last year in 24. I think that there's all sorts of questions about their QB that they drafted. So, I mean, that would make sense. Maybe they offer a third and the 49ers do that. But I think that would allow the 49ers to have the best of both worlds. They'd have more draft picks, and then they would have that presence on defense where the phrase of the year, the new year, is force multiplier, which I've heard 3 times already. And we're going to hear it so many more times. Today, it was Nick Bosa who was the force multiplier. That means that when Nick Bosa is on the field, everybody around him looks a little bit better. I just said the same thing about Bryce Huff. With Max Crosby and Nick Bosa, you've got 2 force multipliers. You got force triplicators or whatever you want to call it. So I think that would be fantastic. There's a great story about Chris Kasarik, his first year with the 49ers, going into that draft, and it was the Max Crosby draft. Mm-hmm. And Kasarik was coming from a team where they would kind of jump on the guy as soon as he came into the interview. Mm-hmm. And Kasarik just started hammering Max Crosby, peppering him with difficult questions. And Lynch and Shanahan had to say, hey, that's not how we do it here. We take a more gentlemanly approach to it. And so Shanahan has been kind of jokingly apologizing to Max Crosby every time they come across each other since. So I think that there is a good relationship there from afar. And I agree with you. I think there's admiration from afar as well. And I can tell you that whoever becomes the 49ers defensive coordinator won't have to think very long about a trade for Max Crosby. I think that they would do that. I mean, do you think it'll take a first? Do you think it'll take a second?
I think it would take a first. I mean, because it's a late first, right? It's not a 10th pick, right? So I think it'd take the first. I don't think it would take a lot more than that because I think he wants out. I think the Raiders are motivated to move him. He's a good contract too. That's what it makes it even, more valuable. It's a really good contract for a team. I think it'd be a first, might be first and something else, but nothing major. And I've heard there's interest on his side. I mean, again, you hear interest all the time, but you can think that Max Crosby would be really interested in the team making the playoffs all the time, given what he hasn't seen in Las Vegas. Is
he not concerned about the substation?
Yeah, the substation is like he likes a substation. That's a draw for him. It's also an interesting if you can trade your first for Max Crosby, that's fine because you're going to draft the defensive end edge there anyway. Can you get back into the first to get a receiver with Mac Jones plus your second? Something like that. Because I think you're going to want a first round receiver. There are good second round receivers. You're going to probably want, not the 8th best. You're going to want the 6th best. Can you get back the 28th pick, the 26th pick with a pick you get for Mac Jones plus a 2? Is there another way? Can you trade next year's 1 and move up, get your plus a 2 to get into the first round? And by then at that point you want like 18, 19, but that you want to solve both things, right? It doesn't both have to be by trade, doesn't have to be both by free agency, doesn't have to be both by the draft, but you're going to want, I think, starting level or good starting level players at both spots. I think they need multiple receivers. Actually, I mean, Juwan Jennings, either you count him or you don't, but I sort of put him to the side. He's not a guy who gets open against the Seahawks. That's rough when you're playing the Seahawks. He does not, it's obvious. So he caught some passes in the game at Levi's, but obviously nothing huge, and then gets shut out in the playoff game. You need players that are going to bug the Seahawks. You absolutely need that. They do not have them, and it's just such a huge microscope on that in that game. So there's different ways. We'll be talking about it throughout the rest of the offseason, but there's ways. I think they can use their money as a weapon. Like they can take some bad contracts back. You don't do the. Listen, they did, and I wrote about this. I think they did a lot of cutting to save money, purely just to save cash. That's fine. That's up to the owner. But you do it if you're Shanahan and Lynch to do it strategically and to set yourself up to be able to do it now or next year. I think they were thinking, you know what, we'll be okay, not great. Maybe make the playoffs, maybe not. And then we'll gear up and we'll be pretty good in a second year. And then we'll go for the Super Bowl in year 3. I think they're ahead of that schedule. I definitely think they're ahead of that schedule. And you try to get into it where we're trying to build up slowly. You build up fast because you got the players. And again, is Christian McCaffrey going to be Christian McCaffrey in 2 years? I mean, we don't even know if he's going to be it next year. I think he will be, but 2 years from now, that's a lot of carries, a lot of touches. I think you don't. What they don't have, they talk about all these depth players. They talk about all the draft picks, all 11. How many times did Lynch say that? All 11 players on the draft are still on the team, not on the full roster, but they're associated with the team, some on the practice squad. None of them are stars. And maybe maybe Mikael Williams turns into a star, maybe, but none of the last 2 years. All of them are, the ones on the team are very serviceable players. Dominic Pooney, probably the best out of all of them, but nobody's a Pro Bowl player, and I don't know if any of them really project to be Pro Bowl players. You need to get Pro Bowl players like Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Trent Williams, the heart of their Pro Bowl roster are not going to be Pro Bowlers for very much longer, and they may not be on the team for very much longer. Just the way the NFL works, they need to replace that. And it's better when it overlaps, of course, right? You better when you have old Pro Bowlers and new Pro Bowlers, not old Pro Bowlers who go away, gap, then you have new Pro Bowlers. You need them, and this is the year for them to do that because it might lead them to a Super Bowl.
Well, if they went, I don't want to say all in, but largely in, like you're suggesting, wouldn't that be going against the Tim Kawakami philosophy that, you're asking for trouble when you rely on players who have already been injured to, be in key spots? I mean, you got four of your primaries are coming off of major injuries. And I know everybody's so optimistic about, this happens every year. Oh yeah, we think he's going to be back for the beginning of training camp. He's ahead of schedule. And then, we get to training camp and, Shanahan does the very first one, and he says that Nick Bosa is not going to practice, and then it becomes something where it's week in and week out. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but you'd be pivoting, hinging so much on the fact that these guys are all going to come back looking like their peak selves.
Well, I agree with that. I'm saying you get good players in here where you offset that if they're out for 6 weeks, because Justin Jefferson, no history of injury. Max Crosby, zero history of injury. He had a little bit last year, but he was ready to come back. Raiders didn't let him come back. Like I would say you would have a great point on me if I say go get guys who've been hurt. These guys are incredibly healthy players, and they help you lift wherever you're going to be with your injured players. They lift you above that, and they already were 12-5 and beat the Eagles of Philadelphia and played for the number 1 seed. And if they'd won that game, I think you would have, we all would have thought they had a decent chance to get the Super Bowl. This is how you can't wait for guys to get healthy when you have Christian McCaffrey and Trent Williams going into the final years of their prime. This is the only time. They got 1 or 2 more years of these guys at this level. And I just say take advantage of it now, cash it in now. If it's draft picks, it's so what if it's draft picks? So you haven't gotten Pro Bowls from your draft picks. You got to get a Pro Bowlers somehow, 20-year-old, 25-year-old, 27-year-old Pro Bowlers. But that's a whole other thing. We'll talk on and on about this. I just think now was a really good time for them to do it. I sense that, what have they done? They've traded for McCaffrey. They've traded for Trent Williams. They've traded for Emmanuel Sanders. This is kind of who they are. They just didn't do it last year. I get it. I think they're set up to do it this year. That doesn't mean you're paying tons of money. It means you are willing to do it. You're willing to extend, and you're willing to give some draft picks. And if I'm the 49ers, I'd be willing to do that, given the state of their roster, given how close they are, and some of their players are older. I will say, what I really appreciated was John Lynch saying, yeah, all the guys that we lost, Mooney Ward, Talanoa Hufanga, Dre Greenlaw, Malia, he named all of them. And there's a few he didn't name, Jalen Moore, Jordan Mason. And that's fine. There were so many of them. Went to other teams liked them. And then when our guys got hurt, we didn't have that depth. Interesting point, Matt Barrows.
I've heard
Very
that.
interesting.
I've heard that point made a few times.
You might have heard that from me, because you can have, you can have starters. You can pencil guys in. It's good to have guys who are good beneath them because guys get hurt. And I appreciate John Lynch saying that, because I'm sure he knows I've been saying it. I might have said it to him, and it's true. Understood why they did it. I just think they did it too far. And I get that, he didn't have to say that. He didn't have to say there's some players that we could have kept what happened if Kyle Juszczyk gets someone else signs him? What happened then? Like he was an ex-49er for like 2 days last year. And he was really good this year. Now they got him back for cheaper, but you can debate that one. It's just, I just think let's just, every time someone says, oh, they can just replace this person with a draft pick, let's just go back to this year. And I will say, I think they could have used Leonard Floyd. I'm not saying they beat the Seahawks if they have Leonard Floyd. I'm just saying they would have been better. Malik Collins would have been huge for this team. Dre Greenlaw, injury history, I kind of understood that. Hufanga, man, he made plays for the Broncos. They love him. They love Hufanga. So just say I appreciate John. Thank you. John Lynch. You and Danielle York might not appreciate what you said. I'm going to say I appreciate what John Lynch said. Let's get some podcast business out on the air here.
For a second there, when he was ticking off that list, he struggled with finding Leonard Floyd's name.
Yeah.
And I thought that Tim was just going to run and grab the microphone and just yell into the microphone as loud as Leonard Floyd, say his name.
Hey, right. He's right. When he's right, he's right.
Well, when he's right, he's agreeing with Tim Calatoni. That's the joke. Okay, here's my last question about your trade, where they trade for Joe Burrow and all the greatest players.
Jamar Chase. Yeah, go get Jamar Chase.
Your fantasy football trade. Why don't we just skip the middleman and send Mac Jones and a second-round pick to Las Vegas for Max Crosby? Wouldn't that be just the cleaner way to do it?
Yeah, I mean, I could see doing that. Yeah, I mean, I would not do anything that would preclude me from getting Justin Jefferson. You might not, but yeah, if you can get Max Crosby without giving up a first round pick and trade your backup quarterback who you're not playing if things are going right, 100%. I think they can get Crosby. I do think that. I think you probably think that too. I just, that feels like it's in the air. It doesn't mean it's guaranteed. I've heard this one since last offseason. Now then Crosby goes ahead and stays, and I think he did a new deal, whatever, but it's a really team-friendly deal. Just that one I've heard. Like there's actually like a reason to believe that this really could happen, whatever the price is. If there's a bidding war, they'll have to jump in there. But, he's 29, I think. He's not a young guy. He's young for the 49ers, but he's not young NFL age. I don't know that anyone would top their first-round pick. And they may not even have to put their first-round pick in. So, yeah, that's Mac Jones in a different way. So I understand that. And again, the double beauty of acquiring Max Crosby without giving a first round pick is then you can use your first round pick on a receiver. Like, there's a formula here that they've got these certain value pieces that they can use, and they don't want to burn them all. Can they get a quality receiver in the first round? Like, Tetra McMillan would, that's another kind of dream candidate, another perfect kind of Shanahan receiver. Can they get the next version of him? There's a lot of guys like Tyson, right? There's a Tyson receiver, I think, out of
he's probably not. I think that the Ohio State receiver is the best for the bunch. And then Tyson is probably second. And then there's Lemon from USC, who
he's little though, right?
He's little. He's not very big. But there's a lot of guys. And the first round is not a bad spot to be for defensive end and receiver this year, because that's where there will be a bunch at both positions there. You're not getting the pick of the litter, obviously, but there'll be options.
Well, just think of the year that Aiyuk got drafted. You got Jefferson going 22 and Aiyuk going 25. That's a pretty
that was a good wide receiver year. I think this one is considered pretty good too.
It is, in my mind, man. If you can't get Crosby or Jefferson, I might try to get 2 ones and use them both, one on defensive end, one on receiver. I just think you need to really, really go for quality there. You can get guys in the 5th round for, they love doing that, but their receivers they get in the 5th round don't play all year. Jordan Watkins, right? I mean, it's guy Bell, right? I mean, he was like 6th, 7th round, but like these are not guys you're going to play right away almost every time. You need to go get the premium guys if you possibly can. You need to get the next Justin Jefferson if that's what it comes down to. The next Aiyuk, although that does not sound great to 49ers or 49er fans at the moment. He was pretty good. Brandon Aiyuk was pretty good. You need to get somebody at that level or better. He was
good as a rookie. Debo was good as a rookie.
Yeah.
That's it. I mean, that's the list as far as receivers that have done well as rookies for Kyle Shanahan. So I mean that would be the bridge that they would have to cross. How do they get production out of a rookie receiver when that's been very hard to do on this team? But if you're right and they're really pushing for 26, then that'll be part of their calculus. Maybe that they draft a Debo-like receiver who doesn't really need to kind of master the entire route tree, but is really good with the ball in his hands. That would make sense. You would have to complement him with a good veteran, but that could be something that they do.
It's 10 years. This is 10 seasons. They've been to 2 Super Bowls. I defend them for this. Nick Sirianni's won a Super Bowl. He's not untouchable. That's not the be all end all, but you do have to win a Super Bowl at some point. It's a long time that they've been running this. I think they've done a really good job, but I'm almost talking internal, like themselves. Their feeling about this is, hey, it's time. It's time to do this. Doesn't mean that they're going to be able to, doesn't mean that the money's going to all come flooding in. Maybe they're going to hold back some of this, but I just think it is time. And you just feel it on the other teams. I mean, John Harbaugh won a Super Bowl. Now, it's been a long time since he's gone back, but you feel this pressure. You do feel it. And they're close. They are close. I don't think the Seahawks are that much better. They, healthy 49ers who did win in Seattle this year. So I try to get more premium players. Seattle has premium. That's where they got the 49ers. It's premium players. 49ers don't have enough of them, especially when they start getting hurt. But even then, just that defense is like, 6 top-level guys just smacking you around. And it's very hard for the 49ers to match up like with that in big games, pressure games. So that's my pitch. I'm not saying it's all or nothing, but I'm saying this is the time to take advantage of a situation. They've done it before. They've done it for McCaffrey. They've done it for Trent Williams. They've done it for Emmanuel Sanders. I think that is their nature. They kind of went away from it last offseason. I think it's time to get back to their nature.
Yeah, I agree with you. I will say that, the 2 other good teams in the NFC West have gotten good by hitting their draft picks. I mean, the 49ers used to do that. George Kittle, 5th round pick. Fred Warner, 3rd round pick. There hasn't been a pick like that in a little while. Whereas the Rams, they got Puka Nacua after the first round. They got Kyron Williams well after the first round. The Seahawks have been drafting really well.
They're great. They might be the best drafting team in the NFL.
Yeah. And I would say that those 2 teams have outdrafted the 49ers. And I'm not sure you could have said that, a few years ago, because Kittle, all those 5th round gems that they were getting, Hufanga and Greenlaw, all 5th rounders. They need to rediscover that magic. They need to bring in a guy at some point who's a playmaker, who's a Pro Bowl candidate. And the last 2 drafts, maybe Pearsall's that guy, maybe not. But that's been a missing element for this team in recent years.
All right, Barrows, you got anything else? I think
I'm just still stunned that you put Lynch and Shanahan on the hot seat for 2026.
I'm saying they're putting themselves on the hot seat because they want to win a Super Bowl. And
these guys, Kyle Shanahan, a Coach of the Year finalist for the work he did in 25. Cal Conley's like, hey, you better go. You better
all I do is defend him. All I do is defend him. All I do is defend him. I'm just talking about the natural process of going into your 10th year. He's going to be as hungry to do it as anyone else. John Lynch is going to be as hungry to do it as anyone else. They thought they were
themselves. Probably
they thought they were going to win a Super Bowl in 2019. February 2020, like they really did. And like think about the pent up, anxiety for them when they thought. Like I've had them tell me they thought they'd have 2 by now. They thought they'd have won 2 Super Bowls by now, and they have not yet won one. I don't think it's the only definition. I think Marv Levy's an incredible coach. I think guys who, Andy Reid was an incredible coach before he started winning Super Bowls. All these things are true. I am saying the natural order of things. You go a long time without one, there becomes some sort of pent up. I'm not saying it's now. I'm not, but I'm saying acknowledging it. It's been a lot of years. And those guys themselves, I'm sure, are feeling it, especially when you feel like you were close without a lot of your best players. You understand what this team is capable of. You've got the quarterback. We talk about the 20-year-olds, 20 whatever year olds. That's their guy, right? That's their star, Brock Purdy. But beyond that, you surround him with one or two more. I think this is a team that you could put up against anybody. Who's a team, if the 49ers got Justin Jefferson, what would the rest of the league think, Barrows? It would be, oh, shit. I mean, there's no question it would be, oh, shit. And you want to make moves like that. It's like them getting McCaffrey. It was, oh, shit. And they need oh, shit players, and they have not added one in a while. Again, it's hard to do. Max Crosby would be the same reaction, right? There would definitely be the same reaction. But Justin Jefferson would be even more. So there you go. It's basically my column. Read it in the San Francisco Standard. There it is.
I don't have to. I got the.
Yeah, it's actually, I said it better here. So just listen to this. No, read the column. Read the column. All right, Barrows, we'll get back to you, everybody, probably next week. We will have continuing programs throughout the off season. Maybe not every week, but most weeks, because there's always stuff. When's the next 49er thing, you think? Was it going to be the combine late February?
Yeah, I guess that's officially. I mean, I don't know what the exposure is going to be, in 2 weeks when everyone's here for the Super Bowl, whether you'll bump into Lynch on Radio Row or something like that.
I don't know. Well, Kyle's going to be so far away from that. There's going to be no way. He's just being at Levi Stadium today. They do not want us around. They are doing the Super Bowl. They are prepping for that Super Bowl.
It's Levi's township. I mean, it's like a little city there now. There are tents. But some of these tents have like steel structures to them. I mean, they look like sturdy things, so you could live in them for a while.
Cirque du Soleil was by me for several weeks. This is what the Cirque du Soleil heads look like. There might be like 17 Cirque du Soleils happening in Santa Clara, because that's what it looks like. It's unbelievable. And they're shutting that area down for like a week and a half. Like, we're barely getting in there before they're shutting the whole thing down. So
Cirque du Goodell.
Sure, Cirque du Goodell. Very good. All right, everybody, that is the show for today. We'll catch you next week at some point. See you.